Picture this. A player changes the entire sports economy without touching the floor. Injured. In street clothes. Sitting on the bench. And yet she is still outpacing LeBron James in online engagement, driving billion-dollar investment decisions, and stabilizing a league that has struggled for relevance for decades. 5 years ago, this would have sounded absurd. Today, it is measurable reality. Caitlin Clark's influence no longer depends on minutes played or points scored. Television ratings rise when her name is mentioned. Ticket prices surge even when her availability is uncertain. Corporate sponsors adjust long-term strategy based on her presence alone. Owners plan expansion. Networks rewrite programming. Investors place bets that stretch years into the future. All of it happens whether she is healthy or not. What makes this moment different is scale. Women's basketball has never had a single figure who could move markets this fast. Clark does not just attract fans. She activates casual viewers, families, older audiences, and people who have never watched a full game before. She pulls attention across age groups, across regions, across platforms. That kind of reach is rare in any sport. As 2026 approaches, the stakes grow larger. New media deals. New leagues. New global interest. Decisions being made now will shape the next generation of basketball, not just in the United States but worldwide. This is no longer about highlights or box scores. It is about power. About leverage. About what happens when one athlete becomes bigger than the system built to contain her. The Caitlin Clark effect is not a moment. It is not a trend. It is a shift. And the most important part is this. It is not slowing down. It is accelerating. The real question is no longer whether it can be stopped. The question is whether the sport is ready for what happens next.
Well, a young fan of Caitlin Clark just received what she's calling the best Christmas present ever.
Caitlin Clark's impact goes far beyond the basketball court. PSA, the company that grades sports cards and collectibles, just released its 2025 data, and the numbers are sending shockwaves through the sports world. If you're not familiar with PSA, here's why it matters. This isn't a hobby shop. This is the organization whose grades drive the entire trading card market in the United States and around the world. When PSA assigns a high grade to a card, collectors pay attention. Values rise. Auctions skyrocket. Media coverage follows. In 2025, Clark's cards outperformed nearly every other athlete in the industry, including some of the biggest names in basketball history. Her rookie cards became some of the most sought-after items in the hobby. Demand doubled, then tripled. And for the first time in decades, the hottest sports cards were tied to women's basketball rather than men's leagues. This shift reveals something most people overlook. Clark's appeal is not limited to game nights or highlight reels. It extends into the culture of sports fandom itself, into collecting, investing, and long-term value perception. Parents buying a card for their child. Adults holding on to graded cards as financial assets. Fans tracking values like they would stock prices. PSA's 2025 report shows that Clark-related cards consistently ranked at the top of graded sports memorabilia for the entire year. That means secondary markets, online auctions, collector marketplaces, private sales, were driven by her name. This is not a momentary spike. It reflects serious, sustained interest from a broad audience. Collectors who once focused on traditional Hall of Famers are now chasing Clark's graded cards with equal urgency. In the world of sports collectibles, value ultimately comes down to attention and demand. And right now, Caitlin Clark has both in abundance. Her influence stretches into corners of sports culture few athletes, male or female, have ever reached. And the industry is still trying to fully understand what PSA's 2025 data means for the future of sports collecting.
PSA graded cards and just basically kind of break down the process of how this works.
When PSA speaks, collectors listen. When PSA releases its annual rankings, it doesn't just reflect trading card values. It reveals who matters in the wider sports world. And the company's 2025 report confirms something truly remarkable. Caitlin Clark became the most collected active basketball player on the planet. Let that sink in. She didn't just make the top 10. She didn't just show up with a respectable presence. She obliterated the competition. In PSA's rankings, Clark outpaced every other active basketball star, including LeBron James. LeBron, a player who has been one of the faces of basketball globally for more than 20 years. 4 NBA championships. Countless all-star appearances. One of the most recognizable athletes in history. And yet, in the world of collectibles, where passion, nostalgia, and future value intersect, it was Caitlin Clark who dominated. Her rookie cards became the most sought-after basketball cards for the entire year. Collectors competed in auctions. Prices climbed well beyond what most analysts expected. Secondary markets buzzed with interest whenever her name appeared. This shift is more than a headline. It signals a broader change in sports culture. Card collectors are not just betting on performance. They're betting on cultural impact, long-term relevance, and visibility. In 2025, that impact belonged to Catlin Clark. A player still early in her career. A player redefining what star power looks like in women's sports. Her influence now stretches into corners of fandom that once belonged almost exclusively to the biggest male athletes. PSA's rankings don't lie. Collectors voted with their wallets. And in the world of sports memorabilia, the most collected player tells us who the market believes will still matter decades from now. In 2025, that player was Catlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark and LeBron James. I mean, there's their game. There's actually some parallels between their game.
Imagine this. A player who outperforms every active basketball star in collectibles. Not because she's dominating games, but because the conversation around her has become a cultural force. PSA, the company that grades trading cards and sets the benchmark for the entire hobby, released its 2025 rankings and Catlin Clark topped the list. Not just in women's basketball. Not just in basketball overall. She outsold and outcollected every active NBA player in the world. Players with multiple MVP awards, multiple championships, and the all-time scoring record. And here's the real shocker. She did it while injured, spending most of the season on the bench. Unable to play a meaningful minute. This is not a short-lived trend. It's not a temporary bump on a graph. It signifies a structural shift in how sports culture operates. PSA also published a geographic breakdown of graded cards by state. When you filter for basketball, the map looks almost unanimous. Every corner of America is sending in more Catlin Clark cards for grading than any other player. It resembles an electoral map where one candidate sweeps the nation. Clark had 3 of the 10 most graded sports cards in 2025 across all sports, not just basketball. She ranked ahead of football's top stars, baseball's emerging icons, and hockey's premier talents. She competed with names like Patrick Mahomes, Shohei Ohtani, and Connor McDavid, and she topped them. Now consider the arc. In 2024, Clark was ranked 6th among the most collected basketball players. That in itself was impressive. But in 2025, despite missing the bulk of the season due to injury, she vaulted to number 1. Think about that trajectory. Think about what it takes for someone to leap from 6th to 1st while they're not even playing. Ryan O'Hog, president of PSA, addressed the phenomenon directly. He said that this kind of momentum, dominating the card hobby, usually only happens with athletes who reach an iconic level. He explained that this is not about basketball performance anymore. It's about cultural impact beyond the sport itself. When an athlete can lead the collectibles market from the bench, they've transcended their game. Their name alone moves markets. Their image alone drives demand. That, analysts say, is why influential investors are placing huge personal bets on Catlin Clark's trajectory in 2026, in some cases involving millions of dollars of their own wealth. Much of that confidence circles back to one global brand, Nike. According to financial data in mid-2025, Nike stock had dropped nearly 60% since 2021. For a century-defining brand once synonymous with athletic dominance, this was not a minor wobble. Analysts openly debated whether Nike had lost its cultural edge, especially as newer footwear and apparel companies like On Running and Hoka gained market share with younger consumers. The swoosh, once the unquestioned emblem of performance and style, suddenly felt challenged. And then came Catlin Clark, not just as an athlete but as a branding phenomenon. Her presence, her appeal, and her reach offered Nike a chance at resurgence, a way back into relevance with audiences that had drifted toward newer, flashier, or more niche brands. In the current landscape, Clark isn't just a star on the court. She has become a focal point for media, sponsorship, and investment strategy. A rare figure whose influence extends beyond athletic performance into the economic heart of sports culture itself.
But not everyone knows the story behind the iconic Nike swoosh.
Not everyone understands what the Nike swoosh has represented for decades. It was once a symbol of dominance, innovation, and cultural leadership. But by 2025, that symbol was under pressure. Investors were nervous. Employees were uneasy. Across the sports apparel world, competitors watched closely as Nike's momentum slowed and its stock lost significant value from its peak years. The question was no longer about quarterly earnings. It was whether the giant had lost its instincts. Then came the Catlin Clark moment. After a game, she signed her game-worn shoes for fans. That simple act became a lightning rod. Those shoes were not a product launch. They were a reminder of what did not exist. Fans wanted a Caitlin Clark signature shoe, and they wanted it immediately. Demand was loud, measurable, and undeniable. Arena sellouts, television spikes, merchandise searches. The market was speaking clearly. Nike had the most marketable athlete in women's sports under contract, and nothing on shelves to match the moment. Instead, Nike released a signature shoe for Aya Wilson first. Wilson is a dominant force, a champion, and one of the greatest players of her era. That was never in dispute. But business is about timing and demand. And the timing belonged to Clark. She was the player driving casual fans into arenas and pulling non-WNBA viewers into broadcasts. The disconnect was obvious to consumers. Why was the biggest draw in the sport still waiting? Whether it was supply chain caution, internal delays, or slow decision-making, the result was the same. Public confidence slipped. To many, it felt like another example of Nike missing a fast-moving cultural moment. Another sign that the company that once defined sports trends was now reacting instead of leading. Then the story shifted. Quietly. Behind closed doors. On December 22, 2025, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, purchased roughly 50,000 shares of Nike stock with his own money. This was not a symbolic gesture. Cook does not need speculative investments. He has access to the best financial intelligence in the world. When someone at that level commits millions to a struggling brand, it signals belief in an upcoming change, not nostalgia for the past. He was not alone. Nike's own CEO, Elliott Hill, also purchased about $1 million worth of company stock around the same time. Executives rarely make moves like this without confidence in what is coming next. These were not public announcements. They were quiet votes of confidence. Taken together, the message was clear. Something was being built. Something not yet visible. And at the center of it all sat the most powerful variable in modern sports marketing. Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin autographed her game-worn shoes.
Think about what that signals. A CEO investing his own money is not a casual move. That is not branding. That is belief. When executives expect trouble, they protect themselves. They sell quietly. They distance early. They do not buy. Elliott Hill did the opposite. He committed personal capital and tied his confidence directly to Nike's future. That kind of decision only happens when leadership sees momentum forming before the public does. And the early numbers began to support it. In the most recent fiscal quarter, Nike's North American business grew by 9%, reaching more than $5.5 billion. That may not sound dramatic at first glance, but context matters. This came after years of stagnation, shrinking margins, and constant predictions of decline. Growth returned where decline had become normal. That alone changed the tone inside the company and across Wall Street. The direction was no longer downward. The curve was bending back up. And insiders knew why. The catalyst was not a new factory or a cost-cutting plan. It was a single athlete with unmatched cultural pull. Caitlin Clark's upcoming signature shoe. A product designed not just to sell sneakers, but to reset Nike's relevance with a younger generation while re-engaging older fans who remembered when Nike set the agenda for sports culture. Then came December 31st. Caitlin Clark appeared on the New Heights podcast with Travis and Jason Kelce. The timing was precise. The audience was massive. The hosts reached across generations, from longtime football fans to younger social media audiences. Clark spoke calmly about her rise, her injury recovery, and the pressure of expectation. She did not promote anything directly. She did not need to. The appearance alone reinforced what Nike executives already understood. Her influence extended far beyond the court. She was not just an athlete returning from injury. She was a brand driver, a cultural anchor, a figure capable of shifting attention, spending habits, and public perception. For Nike, that meant something rare. A second chance to lead instead of chase. And this time, the people at the top were not guessing. They were betting.
People watch. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. It doesn't matter if there's other NBA player despite being unable to play.
The WNBA draft is this Monday, and Iowa star Catlin Clark is expected to be the #1 pick. Here to comment is Catlin Clark.
Apple CEO investing $3 million in Nike based on her signature shoe launch? Check. Nike CEO betting $1 million on his own company's recovery tied to her product? Check. Revolutionary shoe technology never used before being developed specifically for her? Check. And development resources into her signature shoe. Billionaire CEOs are betting their personal fortunes on her success. Every measurable indicator of cultural relevance points in the same direction. Catlin Clark has transcended being just a basketball player and has become something much larger. She's a brand unto herself. She's a cultural movement. She's proof that women's sports can generate mainstream interest on par with men's sports when the right athlete emerges with the right combination of talent, personality, and timing. The haters said it would die down. They predicted that once the novelty wore off, once people got used to seeing a woman dominate basketball in ways they hadn't seen before, the interest would fade. They were catastrophically wrong. The interest hasn't faded, it's intensified. They said missing a season would kill her momentum, that absence from the court would make people forget about her and move on to the next thing. They were wrong again. Her momentum has only grown stronger during her time away. The trading card numbers prove it, the CEO investments prove it, the media deals prove it. Everything measurable suggests that Catlin Clark's cultural power isn't dependent on whether she's currently playing. Her name alone moves markets. Her return creates event television. Her partnership with brands generates results that justify massive investments. Everything is aligned. The shoes, the broadcasts, the marketing blitz, the millions of eyes waiting, all orbit around a single force, Catlin Clark. She isn't just playing basketball anymore. She's reshaping the culture, rewriting the economics, and proving that women's sports can command the same stage, the same attention, the same power as any male counterpart. But the bigger question remains, can the world keep up with this momentum? Can any league, any sponsor, any system harness the gravitational pull of a phenomenon this unstoppable? 2026 is just the beginning, and the next chapter could change everything we thought we knew about sports, influence, and culture. When Catlin Clark steps back on that court, the world won't just watch. It will witness a revolution, will witness a revolution, will witness a revolution.